Alrighty guys, is the camera rolling? Finish the fight. The missions change. They always do. I need a weapon. Did I nail it? Did I do a good... Why are you walking away? No, stay. Okay, well, let's get on with the review then. What's going on everyone? James here with another real review, and today we're getting into one of my most highly anticipated TV series of the year, Halo, the series, which is debuting on Paramount Plus Thursday, March 24th. Now that's episode 1. Episode 2 is coming out a week after, so we're on that weekly release schedule. A huge thank you to Paramount Plus for giving me the chance to watch episodes 1 and 2 early for review. So that's what we're going to do today, guys. We're going to dive into my spoiler-free thoughts on episodes 1 and 2, but don't worry, I'm planning to get into that spoiler discussion as these episodes release live, but for now, we're keeping all spoilers at bay. Now, Season 1 is expected to have 9 total episodes, directed by Otto Bathurst and starring Pablo Schreiber as the Master Chief, Natasha McElhone as Dr. Halsey, and Jen Taylor as Cortana. There's an entire supporting cast here, guys, that we are going to talk about, and one lead that I haven't mentioned just yet because she deserves a section on her own. But if you're unfamiliar with Halo, this is a video game franchise, guys, and it's spanned so far 6, 7, even 8 games at this point, even more if you count Halo Wars. So it has been just an incredible run for this franchise, some highs, some lows, but here is what I was really curious about. How do they transition Halo from a video game series to a TV series? The premise is pretty simple. Aliens threaten human existence in an epic 26th century showdown. Now guys, there are some fun facts that you do need to know before we hop into the review, but before we get into that, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about all things movies and TV. So if you do too, go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, and hit the thumbs up button again if you are a big fan of Halo, and let me know down below in the comments which Halo game is your favorite. Yeah, I got my pick. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and dive into some things you need to know before we get started, and that is this story is not following the exact canon of Halo. This is called the Silver Timeline, and the name is derived from the Silver Fire team that Chief leads in this series, but essentially it allows the creators of this series itself to take creative liberties because it's not exactly canon. There are some cool Easter eggs in here and some things that might line up, but for the most part, this isn't canon, so adjust your expectations accordingly. It's executive produced by Stephen Kane alongside the man himself, Steven Spielberg. Yes, you heard that name correctly, Steven Spielberg, and it's already been renewed for a 2nd season. Go figure. And if you really wanted to know the titles of both episodes, episode 1 is titled Contact, and episode 2 is called Unbound. Alrighty, enough of those fun facts. You came here for the review, so I'm gonna give you the review, and you know what? Let's start with the positives, because guys, right at the top of my list is this. Halo is maybe one of the biggest surprises of the year. Episode 1's opening sequence just shows how great this adaptation can be. There's some amazing action, pulse-pounding moments between the Spartans and the elites, and then you have this dose of humanity that is put into the show. I mean, the cold open alone is worth the price of admission for this series. If you're a fan, it gives you fan service. If you don't know much about Halo, it's gonna give you that sci-fi element that you are kind of familiar with when it comes to other TV shows and movies, but this is such a unique property in and of itself, and I do think that's so far so great. Now we will talk about the acting in a little bit, but from an action standpoint, guys, I really enjoyed the blend of CGI and live action itself. You got elites carrying energy swords, you got plasma rifles and pistols going crazy, and you even have Chief jumping, you know, because, well, he's a Spartan, so he has these like unnatural physical abilities, but I do think it was blended together pretty well in that opening act, and even throughout. I think the action itself lends itself well to practicality and CGI. And even for those who are not participating in any sort of action sequences yet, the CGI for characters like the Prophets was just incredible. I mean, it is obvious that they had a huge budget for this show because even the worlds that they were constructing looked awe-inspiring. It was beautiful, but you can tell that they placed the budget for this show in the right areas, because you even look at the Mjolnir armor that is being worn by these Spartans, Chief and his fire team, and it is incredibly awesome. And when it comes to the realism of the action, it's kind of tough to combine realism with plasma weapons in a sci-fi setting, but they do it here, and it feels brutal. I mean, you even see in the beginning, one of Quan's friends actually gets her head blown off, and then on the other end, you have an elite getting their head blown off, and it's like, what is going on? But I mean that in the best way possible, because episode 1 just blew my socks off. But again, guys, it's not all about the Master Chief and Silver Team fighting the Covenant. We have those moments of humanity. I love that episode 1 opens on the planet Madrigal, and it doesn't start us off with the Spartans or the elites. If anything, it starts us off with these human beings. They're playing cards around the table. They're talking about this weird guy who was put into power named Venture. And then you also have Quan with her friends, and they showcase her childlike ambition to getting off of planet Madrigal. Well, that's until a Covenant Phantom showed up, but that's a discussion for another day. And then episode 2 follows that up with the dynamic between Quan and Master Chief being explored. There's honestly some really surprising writing in here too, because I'm feeling for these characters, especially Quan, who is my favorite so far. She is probably our look into this world. We're seeing it almost through her eyes sometimes, but not only is that excellent acting, I just think it was great writing because her character arc has the most potential. And I do love the angle they're taking with the UNSC too, because there's some political commentary that's injected here with Venture, who was a ruler put into power by the UNSC who is known for his war crimes, but then they showcase unethical behavior by Dr. Halsey and the UNSC themselves. But I know, you're probably not here for me to talk about all of that. You want to hear, how is the Master Chief in live action, right? And I'm here to put some of your worries to rest because, guys, I think they pretty much nailed it. Pablo Schreiber is actually solid as Spartan 117, and I liked his voice as Master Chief as well, and there is this level of emotion that he injects into the role, but it is more subdued than it's laid on thick, which is perfect for this character. But hey, the Master Chief is not known by that moniker. He's actually known by John because, well, they do dive into his past a little bit, whether it be through flashbacks or actual scenes dedicated to a young John with young Soren, one of his childhood friends that they were, I guess, coming up together with each other in this Spartan program. But I love the fact that this series is making this character more accessible, because at the end of the day, they have to make sure that this series is at least widely accepted by many audiences, and it can't just be for the video game fans. So I definitely understand that, because even outside of the flashback scenes, we see Master Chief take off his helmet. Well, let's just say he does that in both episodes. Now, as a huge fan of the video game franchise, again, I am a little bit weirded out by that, but we'll touch on that later on in this review. But just know that it's not the worst thing in the world when you wrap your head around the fact that they're doing it to, I guess, build that connection between Chief and the audience. Alrighty, so now let's get into the cast itself outside of the Master Chief, because there's a lot of standouts to talk about here, starting with Quan. Yurin Ha is killing it here as Quan, who's the daughter of Jin Ha, who was the leader on planet Madrigal. And I love the fact that they're kind of putting Quan and the Chief together, and it's like they're learning from one another. Chief is learning how to trust, and Quan is also kind of learning how to trust the UNSC and the Spartans, so it's like wiping away all of those memories she thought she once had of the UNSC. So I love that they're breaking through that barrier with this character, and Yurin Ha is capable. There's this level of emotion she also brings to the role that is just so fitting for everything that's going on, because she's literally seeing her father and everyone get thrown around, and the people of her planet and her home world getting tarnished. So yeah, she really works for me. But guys, there are also some legacy characters here that are put on display, and in the first 2 episodes you kind of get a feel for where the creators are going, and they are taking some liberties with these characters too. Let's start with Dr. Halsey, that's played by Natasha McAlone. To be honest, this is one performance that had to grow on me over time between both of these episodes, but eventually she gets to a point where she's able to really be a little bit sassy, smart, but also the Dr. Halsey that I kind of know from the video games. She's willing to take those risks and do what is necessary that others might not even think of to literally save the galaxy. And I love these standoffs that Natasha McAlone has with Shabana Azmi, who plays Admiral Parangoski. I mean, both of them are great together, but man, they just kind of build off of one another. Yeah, they have some intense moments of dialogue, and I'm like, y'all, it's getting a little hot in here. And when it comes to Captain Keyes himself, this is the steady voice that the series needs. Danny Sempani is really good as Captain Keyes here. He is calmer. He's trying to, of course, show his daughter that he loves her, but also that they got a job. There's a mission at hand. But there is this cool contrast between Captain Keyes and his daughter, Dr. Miranda Keyes, that the show is beginning to tease. We don't get a lot of Danny Sapani in the first 2 episodes, but we do get a heavier dosage of him in episode 2, and he shows that he can really be the Captain Keyes that we need. So you have Captain Keyes delivering a heartfelt and warm performance, and then you also have Miranda Keyes, who's played by Olive Gray, who is, in my opinion, the person that has the most potential in this series during episode 2. Olive Gray has this no-nonsense attitude. She is ready to go. She is a researcher, but she's trying to vie for more, I guess, opportunity to showcase that she can help the UNSC. And there are some moments where Olive Gray gets screen time, and I was floored. There was this little conversation that she had with Yurin Ha, and I was like, yo, this is an incredible moment, and they're not even present in the same room together. So I just can't wait to see how Dr. Miranda Keyes and Quan interact with one another when they are just, I guess, either fighting together or fighting against one another. But to me, it seems like these two are going to be great friends, and I just love what they're building and alluding to, because Olive Gray, to me, again, just has a high ceiling in Halo. Alrighty, so now we're going to dive into the creative liberties that the showrunners take with Halo. For the most part, guys, I actually really like what they're doing with the Silver timeline, and again, it's not canon, so I had to detach what I knew from the franchise and just kind of sit down and take the series for what it is. And there are a lot of changes that I liked. There's much more diversity here, which does speak to the vastness of the galaxy and how unique humanity is. The changes to Dr. Keyes and Captain Keyes to make them black instead of white characters that we know from the video game franchise absolutely worked for me. And I love them introducing new characters like Soren, who's played by Bokeem Woodbine. He's a friend of John, a former Spartan, but man, he delivers such a personable yet hilarious performance. He is just all the way locked in, and honestly, he does deliver probably one of the most solid and well-rounded performances so far in this series. And I'm so sure that we won't be seeing the last of him in episode 2. And then you have another new character, someone who I was kind of skeptical of as a character, not as an actor, but the Blessed One. Charlie Murphy plays the Blessed One here, and she is that link between the Covenant and the humans, but she's working for the wrong team. So honestly, I do love what they did here, because at first I was a little confused. I'm like, don't tell me that they're making this character be the face of the Covenant. But it doesn't seem that way, at least so far. But if you want Easter eggs that remind you of the video game franchise, you have that here, like the flood, shield recharge noises, and even elites going wort 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 wort. I'm not even lying, that happens in the first episode. If you missed it, you need to go back and watch it. But I just happen to enjoy a lot of the changes they made while also sticking true to the source material. But even though we have all of those positives, you guys, there are some negatives that I want to bring up over these first 2 episodes. And at number 1 really is the writing itself. Sometimes it gets a little dry. I noticed that it wasn't as sharp in episode 2, but even in episode 1, there are moments where we do get characters saying things that feel a little unnatural, and there are times where your mind kind of goes elsewhere because the conversations aren't as strong. But what's great about this so far is that every time I had that feeling, it was washed away pretty quickly. Even when we have moments without action, I do feel like the writing is strong enough to sustain itself over the course of 9 episodes. And when it comes to the Silver team, they're not the negative here, but what does stink is how much we haven't gotten time with them. Now that worries me, because there's some amazing performances that are just ripe here for the Silver team and Chief. But man, I love the Silver team. I love Riz, Vanek, and Kai. They're all great. They all deliver amazing performances. And for me, my favorite member of the Silver team, it's Riz. I just really hope we get much more of them, because I do think their connection with Chief is going to be important down the line. Now, when it does come to the CGI, even though I was raving about it, I'll be honest, it's a little bit jarring at first, especially with the elites, because it's not as smooth as other moments of CGI that we got over the course of these 2 episodes. So in the first 2 hours, guys, there are going to be a lot of moments of CGI. You're going to notice it. Some moments of green screen, you're going to notice it. But you have to remember, this is a sci-fi show, and they had to do their best with the set design and the production design. And for the most part, even from the costumes all the way down to how they designed certain worlds, practically, it works. It's just the CGI that is a little bit jarring at first. Now, these next 2 negatives are probably my biggest gripes with the show so far. Let's start with the frequency at which Master Chief takes off his helmet, because every time he takes it off, it almost, you can kind of justify it, but then there are some moments where he's walking around with his helmet at his side and carrying the artifact in his other hand, and I'm like, dude, you could just keep your helmet on. It would make it much easier. And the justification for taking off his helmet as much doesn't make sense, because he even has a moment of dialogue with Quan where he tells her how important the helmet is. So I get that they need to show him without his helmet to build that connection with the audience in a more general audience, but as a video game fan, to me, it happened too often and it did take me out of some scenes. And then the second thing is what the creators are trying to do with getting us in the helmet of Master Chief. I literally mean getting us in the helmet. There's this first person HUD display that is showcased in episode 1 pretty prominently, and it happens a little too often. Even the aiming reticle was a little bit off compared to where Chief was looking at some points, at least it was to me. So I just really was hoping that they would do this less. It felt a little gimmicky after a while, but luckily in episode 2 they kind of go away from that. But that is also because Master Chief doesn't have his helmet on as much. So it has its cool moments, but I do think that they overuse it too much. So overall, you guys, how do I really feel about Halo the series? And I got one word for you: surprised. I can't even front. These 2 episodes were good to great in so many moments, and I really enjoy what they're doing with this series. To me, it has potential to be the best video game adaptation across any medium that we've ever gotten. The budget is there, the firepower is there. I mean, they have it all nailed down almost perfectly in terms of the set design, the costumes, and the characters themselves are unique enough for us to really connect, and I do think that they have enough source material here to play with as well as new material to really cover 9 episodes and make it feel like a whole story. There are enough moments of fan service here for those who love the franchise, but for those who don't even know anything about Halo, I think this is going to be a really solid doorway into this franchise. You're not going to be lost with a lot of Forerunner talk, at least not yet, and I do think that there's some hints at where this show is going that have really just blown my mind. I get so excited even thinking about it, but this is a spoiler-free review, so I'm not going to do that. The performances really are solid, from Yurin Ha, Pablo Schreiber, all the way to Olive Gray. There's just so much to love about this cast. And you know what? These episodes have rewatchability that works for me. If anything, I enjoy these episodes more on second watch. I went back and watched episode 1 twice, and it actually worked more for me the second time. There were things I missed that I didn't catch the first time. So I do think that when these episodes get released weekly, it is probably in your best interest, especially if you're a Halo fan, just to go and watch them twice, because there is a lot to take away here, and I am just so happy with how this turned out. So yes, my first impression is I am incredibly happy with episodes 1 and 2 of Halo the series, but hey, I need to know exactly what you think about this. So when episode 1 debuts on Paramount Plus Thursday, March 24th, go ahead and let me know down below in the comments what you think of it. Did it live up to your expectations? Do you love what they're doing? And where do you think the series is going? Again, I'm gonna drop my spoiler review next Thursday so we can have that discussion there. But guys, I'm so excited for you to watch this, and hey, if you don't want to miss out on any more reviews just like this, go ahead and hit that big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, and hit the thumbs up button again if you're a big fan of this franchise. Now, I can't wait to go and rewatch these episodes again. Yeah, I may need to do that. Assistant that I don't have, cancel all my afternoon plans. Alrighty guys, again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening.